Before I start, I realized that my camera has been mirrored this entire time, every single video I've made. So we got it back to normal. You can actually read my shirt. It looks correct. So yeah, let's get into it. The NBA trade deadline is officially over, and we may have witnessed the greatest deadline I have ever seen, and maybe in history of the trade deadline. So many trades happened. Obviously, there was out of nowhere trades. There was players who knew they were going to happen. There's players that didn't get traded. There was some crazy things that happened that we expected to happen, that we didn't expect to happen, and all of the things. Some teams got way better. Some teams got way worse. Some teams stood pat. I don't actually know how to say that in the current tense. I don't really know, but they stayed the same. So today I am going to be talking about my prediction for the standings at the end of the year, and obviously throughout along the way, I'm going to be talking about different trades they made that made me feel like they should be bumped up and things like that. So, without further ado, today is going to be the Eastern Conference, or I guess not today. This video is going to be the Eastern Conference. The next video is going to be for the Western Conference. But yeah, let's just get straight into it. What you're looking at right now is the current standings. Obviously, you see Cleveland at the top, you see Washington at the bottom. This is the current standings as of. Actually, I might need to update it. Yeah, this is obviously there was games that went on today, and I forgot to update it. But this is the current standings right now, and I'll just start from. I'm going to start from the bottom because I think the bottom is probably going to be the easiest way to start. Washington is 31 and a half games back. They're going to stay at the bottom. I mean, there's not much to talk about. They shipped out. Um, oh my goodness, what is his name? Kyle Kuzma. And they got in Chris Middleton, so obviously not much is going to change. They're probably going to get worse, if anything. Chris Middleton is going to have much better stats than he probably has in the past. Um, but yeah, Washington's going to stay at the bottom. Charlotte is also going to probably end up staying at the bottom. Um, but this is where it gets fun. So Toronto made the trade for Brandon Ingram, obviously, and I actually think that Brandon Ingram is going to help this team quite a bit. In the long run, you'll see why. I have Toronto over Brooklyn. I have Toronto over Philadelphia, and I have them over Chicago as well as Atlanta. Um, I think they're going to have a pretty good finish to the year. And when I say pretty good, I'm not saying they're going to jump up to the 5 seed, but I think they're going to finish off pretty well overall. So I do have Toronto jumping up. I might bump them up higher if we get to that point. Um, but yeah, so that's kind of the first team I have moving. Let's talk about Brooklyn. Brooklyn is actually they kind of stayed about the same. I'm gonna leave them there. I don't think Brooklyn is gonna be anything special. They didn't get anyone new. They didn't trade Cam Johnson either, which was a surprise. They just kind of kept their team. They traded a couple guys, but nothing too crazy. So I'm going to leave them here. Philadelphia, I do think is eventually going to get healthy. I think they're going to make their way up the standings, and I honestly think they'll probably sneak in as a 10 seed or something like that. So this obviously isn't official. You'll see where I'm going with this, but Chicago, I actually have Chicago dropping. They don't have Zach Levine. They do have Vucevic still, which is actually I found really interesting. They didn't end up trading him to the Warriors like everyone was expecting, but I'm going to leave them at 13. I think the gap between Chicago and Charlotte is pretty big, so I'm just going to leave them there. Um, Brooklyn again, like Brooklyn, I just think Chicago got a lot worse. They're going to probably drop down there. Um, Atlanta's a weird one. Atlanta is a very strange one. Obviously, they lost Jalen Johnson for the year, um, which sucks for them. And then they ended up trading Bogdanovich. They ended up trading Cody Zeller. They traded, I think, someone else. I'm blanking, but um, they traded guys. They traded some guys, and because of that, I'm probably just going to leave them out of the plan. And I think that's my final prediction for teams that are not going to end up making the plan at all for the Eastern Conference. Now, Atlanta is a weird one because I could actually see Trae Young just taking a step and taking him up higher, and that especially if Philadelphia is doesn't stay healthy, I could see them ending up. I could see Philly dropping. Like Paul George can't stay healthy, if Joel Embiid can't stay healthy, etc., etc. You know how it goes. Um, but yeah, that's kind of my predictions for the teams I don't see as a play-in team. These are kind of the bottom level teams. If they do make the plan, I wouldn't be like shocked. I think if Atlanta made the plan, I mostly think the bottom four teams are not at all. So, but anyways, those are the teams that I have out of the plan. I talked about Philadelphia. I talked about Toronto a little bit. Um, Orlando is uh, Orlando is definitely a team that I really like. I've always liked Orlando. I do think Orlando is going to figure out their stride here. And to be honest, I kind of like them jumping into the top six. I think Orlando in a top six spot makes a lot of sense to me. And so for that, I am going to end up having them as a top six seed. Detroit, I'm going to leave at eight for now. They're a good young team. They're not like a surprise team to me. Toronto, it's kind of weird because I don't want to put Toronto too high. Obviously, they have a lot of ground to make up. So that's kind of why I'm leaving them at nine. I do think Toronto is definitely going to be one of the better playing teams if they make it to the plan. Miami is weird because I would have had them higher if Jimmy was playing, but he's not, and now they have Andrew Wiggins. So I don't think they got better. Hero's a good player. Bam's a good player. They have the experience, but I'm gonna put them at seven. I think that just kind of makes the most sense. So for that, I'm gonna definitely leave the play-in tournament for the Eastern Conference like this. For now, maybe I'll make some changes at the end of the video. But let's talk about these top six. Cleveland's going to stay at one. I think we all know Cleveland's going to stay at one. I'm very, very confident that Cleveland is going to end up staying at one. Um, Boston, I assume, is going to end up at two still. They didn't really change much. Obviously, and I should talk about the Cleveland DeAndre Hunter trade. DeAndre Hunter trade was phenomenal. I think that was a perfect trade for them. Um, they're a really good team. They're going to be a tough team in the East. Boston is going to stay at two. I think New York is probably going to stay at three. I think one, two, three is going to end up being basically the same. I think it'll be the same. But this is where it gets fun. Indiana, Milwaukee, and Orlando. I think Orlando would stay at six. I think the 4 and 5 seed would be between Indiana and Milwaukee. And the question would be, in my eyes, is who is going to be the team that ends up getting home court? And in my eyes, I do think it'll be the Bucks. I think the Bucks will do it. The Bucks got Kyle Kuzma, which wasn't a massive upgrade, but I do believe it was an upgrade. Obviously, having Kyle Kuzma as a third option is much better than having him as a first option, so he's going to probably be playing a lot better. Indiana is kind of the same vibe. They didn't do much at the deadline. They didn't make any big time trades or anything really to like shake up their roster. So they're going to be good, and they made a run last year. But I mean, I think them at five makes sense. And this, by the way, this also isn't saying that I don't think Orlando and Indiana and Milwaukee are going to compete for one, two, and three. I think they all have a chance. Cleveland and Boston are my two favorites. I think those two are by far the best two teams in the league. Um, but you know, it's tough. Milwaukee and Indiana would be a really fun series. I would definitely watch all those games. For now, I think I'm going to leave it like this. I don't hate this too much. The Eastern Conference is definitely a lot easier to predict, in my opinion, just because there's gap after gap after gap. The West, you're going to see in the other video I put out. It's a lot harder. It's going to be a lot harder to figure out who's going where and who do I like and who do I not like. Obviously, we haven't seen any of the new additions play with their new teams. But for now, I'm going to leave it like this. I do like it, um, and yeah, my favorite trade in the Eastern Conference was probably. Ooh, that's tough, actually. Not too much really happened in the East. Brandon Ingram was obviously a big one. DeAndre Hunter is probably the next biggest that I can think of off the top of my head. Interesting. But, I mean, Kyle Kuzma, definitely. But, man, I think my favorite trade was DeAndre Hunter. I think DeAndre Hunter is a perfect fit in Cleveland. I think DeAndre Hunter is going to have um, a great rest of his career, depending or however many years he stays there. I think it's that defense is going to be tough. Yeah, let me know what you guys think. I think the standings for the East are a lot easier to predict, so we're going to leave it at this for now. Um, these are my standings. Screenshot if you wish. Use it against me later. I don't really care.